What you're about to see is true. No actors have been used.
Virtually everything that has happened to you has been part of a pre-planned program with the object in view of breaking you down or...
Well, I should maybe not totally, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's total. I'll put it that way.
Would it be fair to say that you feel that what is wrong outside you?
As a result of the outside pressures, yes.
Now, I'd also...
Well, I'd like to go further than that to say that I do recognize the difference between myself and other people in some respects, but I still don't feel ill.
This is psychiatrist Dr. Henry DeRost. What is the nature of this illness?
This man has had a breakdown, in the layman's term, a major breakdown which psychiatrists would refer to as a psychotic break.
But he certainly doesn't think he's sick. At least one gets that impression.
No, that's perhaps one of the most interesting and certainly characteristic features of a breakdown of this kind as opposed to, say, a psychoneurotic illness where the individual is sick and I'm afraid very painfully aware of being sick. The psychotic individual certainly doesn't feel well, but he doesn't attribute the way he feels to something going on inside, but he projects it onto the world around him.
And organizes this very complicated organization.
His whole perception of the world becomes completely different. And as a result of that, when he's walking down the street, literally everything he sees, everything that people do, he sees a group of people standing, talking, they're talking about him. If someone laughs, they're laughing at him. And quite naturally, he puts this all together and refers to this as the organization. Have you any idea why this sudden surge of this program occurred a month ago? Why then, instead of a year ago or 6 months ago?
I was ready to be taken, to put it crudely, at that time, I imagine. That's when they decided that I was ready for it.
They decided that you were ready?
The organization again, or this, I refer to it as the organization.
And what would indicate to them that you had suddenly become ready to be taken?
They know.
They know how you feel.
They know the workings at that point, and they know enough about the workings at that point to know that I can be taken. I think the organization is very highly organized.
And that I'm part of it.
That's right.
And the whole hospital staff?
That's right.
What about the other patients?
What other patients?
On the ward.
I don't believe there are any.
There are no other patients on
I
the
don't
ward?
believe there are any. There actually, I shouldn't say there are no other patients. There are not any. There may be. I don't believe there are any patients on the ward.
In other words, the people around you are disguised as patients or acting as patients?
Yes. Well,
it means, of course, that a tremendous number of people and a tremendous amount of energy must be being expended.
And this bothers me, yes.
In this program for your benefit.
Yeah. Well, this is where, you know, this is the point where I have conflict, of course, but at the same time I have to think of myself. I have only one life, and therefore I can't think too much about the other part. I absolutely can't, otherwise I can't. I have to know it, but just don't attach any emotion to it.
This is self-preservation.
That's all it is.
Do you feel then that the object or the result of all this might be your destruction? This is the goal or aim of all this activity.
That's right.
How do they communicate with you?
They were, or are, my friends, most of them. I just like to leave it like that.
Friends is sort of a strange word to use for people that you believe are actively engaged in your destruction.
I need somebody.
And what of these friends? How did they see his breaking down? This is his friend and employer.
It was apparent that he was not feeling very well. Physically, he seemed to be failing slightly. And in addition, when I started to talk to him on a personal basis, it turned out that he had a feeling of persecution. He referred to they. The they were after him. They were going to change him. And he had a great fear of this. I endeavored to allay his fears, but it didn't seem to do much good.
This is his best friend of 20 years standing.
He became hypersensitive to any suggestion, any hint, any way in which he could find a relationship between what you might say to him and something about himself. He would latch on it right away. He was just looking for things. It wasn't a question of accepting it. He was actually physically all emotionally set to receive any kind of suggestion that anything might at all be related to him in any way. Even the color of your eyes, the color of your shoe, it doesn't matter what it was. Anything at all that could be related to him, he did it.
This is another close friend.
He stayed home from work, and he just wouldn't go out. And one evening in June, he phoned me and told me that he was just petrified, and you could tell by his voice that he was terrified of, I don't quite know what, but something that was bothering him terribly. He wouldn't even go out. He said he was even afraid to put his head outside the door, that they were out to get him, this network of people. They were going by the front door in cars and this type of thing.
Now to meet his mother.
My daughter and her husband, they came down. I wrote and I told them that Jack was certainly a sick boy and he needed help, but I said, I'm at a loss to know what to do. I can't press him too much, because I think even me talking to him, I said, Jack, you need help. I said, it just seemed to upset him, and he'd kind of go against, I think he would go against me. So they came down. So then they settled down, and Marion said, listen, you've got to see a doctor. He wasn't going to see him. Now, I don't know what he said. I couldn't say what he said to them or what the conversation was between them. Anyhow, Marion came into the bedroom. It was after 1, and she said, he's finally consented. He'll speak to a doctor, but he's never going to stay in one of those places. Now, I don't know why. So anyhow, they went. They left. 2, 3, I was awake all night waiting for a call to say they didn't come back. I thought they were in an accident, maybe, or something had happened. Well, then about 3 o'clock, I got a call. Or was it? No, it was around 5 in the morning. And she said, well, we've been crossing the city several times tonight. So they went back. They went to Verdun. They said, well, I got to get him in tonight because now he's willing to see a doctor.
This is Verdun Protestant Hospital.
When you'd, say, be walking down the street, were you aware of any change in the attitude of just strangers that you'd be passing?
Definitely.
Definitely. How would they, what kind of a change would you be aware of?
Breakdown change again. They're after the breakdown. In other words, keep away, don't be friendly, so on.
Mm-hmm. People rejecting you,
Definitely.
trying to keep you at a distance.
Very definitely.
As if you were in some way dangerous?
Alien. Like
Alien.
they've used the term Italian. It alien, it being me.
It alien being the same as Italian, and you're it.
That's right.
And you are alien. Do you feel that you're potentially going to be punished for something?
I'm either going to punish myself by my own mechanism, chemical mechanism, or whatever you want to call it, or I'm going to get that plus an outside punishment, which I don't know, reprimands of some kind or another, although I've been informed that they would be of a psychological nature. In other words, it'd be direction, guidance rather than reprimands, although I don't know, I'm prepared for both. At least I'm trying to prepare myself for both.
Mm-hmm. Who did you feel was responsible for this?
These gentlemen were these individuals who you referred to before, this group.
If you went to Toronto, the same situation would
Yeah.
exist? Or
Yes.
Quebec City or Ottawa, New York?
That's right.
It would be the same.
Well,
Virtually where you went.
in other words, I'd be surrounded, in effect. Without me knowing it, I would be surrounded in my present state.
Yeah.
Later, perhaps not. Perhaps so, I don't know. Perhaps to some extent I would be. Or for a while I would be completely surrounded, and gradually they'd move off and let the other people drift in and normal, so on. But I think that if I went now, yes, I'd be surrounded anywhere I went.
Do you feel during this period even more acutely aware of things
yes.
going on around you?
Mm-hmm.
Much more?
Depends on the time. Depends how excited I get.
Mm-hmm. Would it be possible for you to get angry enough to retaliate?
In what way? And can you explain that further?
I don't know in what way. That would be, of course, up to you. But if you felt, some people, when they feel angry enough, want to strike back.
If I did it, I would do it fairly.
Mm-hmm.
I might strike back, yes. I don't know, but I couldn't answer that.
You mentioned, and that's maybe part of the same thing, that you had, before you came in, a fear of losing control. That you might, as a result of losing control, harm yourself or someone else.
That's right. I did mention this to a person, yes, I did.
Were there any particular people that you felt you might be harmed by
Yes,
this loss
mother.
of control? Your mother.
Just possible. I didn't think I would. I didn't want to take a chance.
Might you have hurt yourself? in
I
that?
might, yes, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Were you being in any way...
I don't know. I want to go back on that. I say definitely. I'm not sure. That's a pretty hard question to ask. I don't know. I don't know. Again, I don't even want to think about it at the moment.
All of this, I gather, then, would have been the result of this pretending and acting and dramatizing that people have been carrying on around you.
That's right.
How do you see all this ending? Or what do you see as the outcome?
Did I not answer that?
Well, yes, sure, although it's such an important thing that if you can just make even a tentative, however guarded, attempt.
It could be all right, I suppose. But again, it may not be. I'd rather not discuss it.
Are you frightened?
Mm-hmm.
Do you become depressed and discouraged?
When?
Anytime. Ever.
I can't allow it. I do. I know I'm there, but I don't. I have to go on to something else to get out of that situation.
What?
I have to bury that feeling somehow or other. Do a job, work harder, or whatever it might be.
Just avoid it in some way.
Yes, I know it's there, but to sort of somehow manage to dispel the feeling.
Has the feeling ever become intense enough that you've had any self-destructive ideas or impulses?
I'm too much of a coward for that at the moment. That's the only reason.
Otherwise, you might
Yeah.
have feelings of this kind.
Yeah.
What sort of a man is this when he is not ill? How do his friends see him? What can he look forward to being again once he begins to hope again?
Because I was responsible for hiring him and I had known him previously, I took quite a close interest in his work. The caliber of his work generally was excellent. He worked in a number of different areas of our operation. He made a very definite impression on some of the senior operating people whom he dealt with. In particular, they commented on his ability to listen to other people, to learn from them, and to apply the information in his work. He was particularly able in analyzing unusual situations in detail and correlating information derived from a variety of sources to present one unified whole. This is a quality which is not too common.
We have things in common. We played chess together. We used to do a lot of bicycling together. We've gone on a 1,000-mile bicycle trip together at one stage in the game years ago. And he comes out to the warehouse in the country, and we fiddle around. We maybe cut up wood, or we go for a walk, or he likes flowers. He knows a good deal about flowers, he had a lot of interests, But basically, business. He loved business, and he loved everything to do with it.
His work involved an awful lot of thinking. And sometimes when he'd come home at night, he'd be just exhausted from the day, from his work. He said, I've got a lot on my mind, he said. I said, yes, we realize that accountancy is a hard occupation. It taxes your brains. So he said, he said, and I can't leave it. When I start something, I've got to finish it, he said. I want to know the wheres, the whys, and the hows of everything. Well, of course, if that's your makeup, you can't do very much about it. But he'd come home some nights, and then he would work until late, 2 in the morning sometimes, busy working, planning for the next day. Nothing. I used to tell him, I say, you need your rest once in a while. I said, you can't burn the candle at both ends. He was rather a quiet child, too. Played very like other children, but more of the quiet type. Never was too much of a roughneck. Maybe he thought that I kind of checked him too much at times. So I really couldn't say if I'm the full cause of it, but as I say, I do feel sometimes that maybe he resents me for being so kind of bring the way his bring up was. Well, his father and I both were of a strict nature.
Does this mother need to feel badly for what her role may have been?
No, I don't think so. She feels very much the same as most families do feel. When someone breaks down, they're generally preoccupied with a lot of sense of guilt and responsibility. But frankly, we don't really know enough, particularly about these major breakdowns, to fairly accuse a family or a member of a family of having been responsible for someone breaking down. Sure, there are factors in the family setting which must contribute, but we're still open-minded about this. For this man, I think that we can very reasonably expect him to get back to at least his pre-illness level of functioning, which, from what his employer has said and from his friends and mother, I think was quite good.
And what about any chance of him gaining ground in other areas?
This is a little paradoxical, and that doesn't always happen, but I certainly have had patients of my own who I think I could quite genuinely say were better as people, function better, were less disturbed by their conflicts after they've had a breakdown than they were before. Because as a result of having the breakdown, they have to look at a lot of problem areas, and they get help with them, and in many instances really do better than they had before they ever became ill.
And what is the possibility of recurrence of an illness of this kind?
Unfortunately, a fairly high percentage, maybe a third, of people with this kind of illness will have to come back into hospital at some time during the rest of their life for further treatment. But when one compares this with a great many physical illnesses, this isn't such a bad record.
Is it reasonable to say that the increased recognizability once someone has gone through this makes it possible to get them better
yes.
quicker?
The patient themselves recognize when they become ill again, and a great many of my patients will phone me or come to the hospital and ask for further treatment when they themselves recognize that something has gone wrong again.
Well, now, people of this kind, are they treated only in a mental hospital?
No. More and more it's possible to treat a patient like this at home or in an outpatient department, sometimes in a day hospital or night hospital. Occasionally, and still fairly frequently, it's necessary for the patient to be in hospital for a few weeks during the acute phase. But more and more the hospitalization phase is less and less the important part of treatment.
Now we see this man again, almost well, almost ready to go out into the world again.
What kind of plans have you got?
To return to work
Mm-hmm.
initially and get myself sort of reorganized at work to some extent, not too much. But I anticipate a good, anticipate I'll be able to do my job quite well and enjoy my fellow human beings a little bit more, perhaps, spend a little more time with them than I had previously.
You talked about being short, remember?
I did?
Mm-hmm.
I don't recall that.
Shortness was something that you were complaining about. And this seemed to have a number of implications, either the shortness in terms of your contact with people.
I just finished reading an article in Flames magazine, an article titled Love, that you call with. And that's the problem. That's basically the problem now.
For you?
For me.
Now, or has it been?
Always been.
Always been.
Yes.
And in what, can you tell me a bit about that?
Mentioning what I've sort of had already been thinking very deeply about prior to reading it. My home environment, I think, deprived me of quite a bit. At the very early stages, not later. I do feel that's where the trouble starts, and unless I can pick this up now, I may be in trouble.
You talked about going back to the age of 2.
Yeah.
And perhaps you meant that the organization's aim was to break you down to the point where you would start all over again. I may be all wet there, but this was a feeling that I had.
Yes, that is correct. I think I even said that. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, quite right. In other words, I was just going to be sort of starting up, age 6 months or less or something like that, and they were going to teach me sort of all over again. Once more, I got to go through all this again.
You had the feeling that this was somehow all prearranged and planned. Do you recall that?
Yes, I recall saying that. I cannot recall just at the moment. Now, maybe a little later I might be able to recall it. But for the moment, I can't recall there's some parts of it that are missing right now.
This isn't too surprising because I think when a person has had a breakdown, quite often the kind of feelings and ideas that they have had when they were acutely ill subside. And when they've recovered, a lot of it becomes quite vague, almost like a dream.
When I'm at my best, I do sense this love of other people and this communication with other people. At that time, I know that I am at my best. And it's no problem then to cope with the problems of life. As a matter of fact, the problems of life seem insignificant.
Now that you're practically near the end of your hospitalization and are spending more time out of the hospital, say, on your long weekends and so on, what is this feeling of being here part of the week and out part of the week in terms of meeting other people?
I don't notice much difference.
You don't feel particularly uncomfortable with them because of this fact?
A little.
A little?
Yes.
I would expect a little, because it isn't an experience that everyone has, and it isn't, of course, an experience that anyone wants to have.
No.
How will you receive this man once he is one of you again? This is what his employer thinks of mental illness.
Many people in the organization have asked for him in his absence. They are looking forward to him coming back. I am looking forward to him coming back. We did not replace him with anybody. The work which he was doing has been carried on in part by other people. When he returns, we feel that after a reasonable period of time that he will be able to regain the position that he was in before, and that we will have an excellent man working for us. Mental health is a problem in that too many people will not accept mental illness in the same way that they will accept the physical illness. Generally, in my company, we do not feel that way.
People are not looking on those places as they used to. And I grew to be that way myself since this has happened. Well, before I was beginning to see more and more, too, that it's a sickness like anything else, and it's got to be taken care of, and there's no distress to anybody. It can happen in the best of families.